Welcome to the Dog Classroom.
The Dog Classroom podcast. I am your co-host, Anne-Marie.
And I'm your co-host, Amelia.
Like and subscribe
on Spotify and YouTube in video format. And now into the episode.
Here we go.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Dog Classroom podcast. I'm here with my special guest, Julia. Julia has been on the podcast before, but we'll do another little intro in case you missed that episode. Julia is a social worker, counselor, therapist. Tell us about you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Julia. I use she, her pronouns. I have been a social worker for the last 15 years in Thunder Bay and across the province of Ontario. I have a counseling business, Julia MacArthur Counseling, and I really enjoy working with adolescents.
Which we're going to talk about today.
Humans and dogs, and adults. And I'm a happy dog owner of two very, very small, very, very cute little dogs, one of whom was an adolescent when I got her.
Yes, and I think we'll probably end up talking a little bit about her today. So that brings us to our topic. We are going to talk about adolescent dogs. And the reason we picked this topic was, number one, because we do have a webinar about adolescent dogs. It started off as a workshop that we did part online and part in person. Mm-hmm. And we've sort of been changing it as we go and improving it. And so we do have the webinar coming up, I think, as of the date of this recording. The next one is March 3rd. Mm-hmm. But if you happen to miss that, check out the website. It will be on there because we do run it regularly.
Yeah.
It's a really popular one. It's a really important topic. So why adolescence?
Yeah.
Why are we talking about this?
Yeah, I mean, adolescence. Oh, who remembers being an adolescent?
Don't we all?
That was a hard time.
I know from my perspective, from the dog world perspective, most behavioral euthanasias, unfortunately, are adolescent dogs. And most dogs that are relinquished to shelters are adolescent dogs.
Yeah.
And that's important because they're going through a lot of changes that we're going to talk about. And it's not just that, people do give up dogs for different reasons, mm-hmm. but it's not just, people are moving or people are getting divorced. There's reasons why these dogs are sometimes being given up.
Yeah.
And we want to hopefully prevent that. And we want to talk about it a little bit.
Absolutely.
So maybe you can tell us a little bit as to why adolescents are so challenging.
Yeah. So adolescent dogs are challenging because, like you said, they're going through so many changes. And, mm-hmm. Human adolescents, when like human children are becoming adolescents, they say that like each year of your adolescence is worth 5 years of development as an adult.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thought.
Yeah. And so you think like you compress that for a dog into, 2 years, maybe years? Like 2-ish years.
I would say, I think most of the things that I've read have adolescents defined as 8 months to 2-3 years.
Yeah, that's what I've read too. So, they're going through puberty. They have all kinds of like hormones going through their body. They're often going through really significant growth spurts.
Yes.
Their brains are growing and developing. They're engaging with the world in a whole new way.
Right. Yeah, because when you have a puppy, I find everybody knows that the puppy stage is going to be challenging mm-hmm. because you go, okay, your carpet's going to get ripped up. There's going to be, pee in your floor. You're going to have sleepless nights. They're going to bite you, all that stuff. And then everyone thinks that, by the time they're 6 months, they should be perfect, right?
Yeah. And like they kind of are for like maybe a couple months in there, like 6 months to 2 months.
They give you a glimpse. Like they give you some hope.
Look, I've stopped doing all these behaviors and I've learned how to sit on command.
Yeah.
And then adolescence
and then
hits.
It's gone.
Yeah.
But I think too, like you mentioned, they're going through growth spurts. When our puppies hit that adolescent phase, they sometimes look like adult dogs.
Yeah.
And then people forget and they assume that, because it looks like an adult, that it should behave like an adult.
Yeah.
And so that's just not true.
It's
right?
just not true, no.
And I think there's so many different pieces that we need to be aware of mm-hmm. When they're going through adolescence, which is why there's an entire workshop on it. We can't touch on all of them today, but maybe briefly you can talk about some of the big things that they're going through.
Yeah, so Adolescence is this like secondary socialization period for dogs. So, you know, puppies have this socialization period that it's really important to have them interacting with other dogs, interacting with other humans. They can be more fearful, I think, during that period. And so it's important to make sure that they have the support they need to navigate the world. And then what's lesser known is that adolescent dogs go through a similar, different, but a similar period of secondary socialization. And some people think that some people argue that it's even more important than that initial puppy socialization period, because it gives dogs and their owners the opportunity to correct things that maybe didn't go as well when they were puppies. You know, like we don't all get a dog when they're a tiny puppy. Like I didn't get my dog when she was a tiny puppy. Luckily she was raised like really, really well. But like if she had been through something, you know, she potentially could have some of those things that impacted her, like really early puppyhood, kind of corrected by being able to have a safe environment and be able to go out into the world and discover the world in a safe way that maybe she didn't get to before.
I think that's really important too, is to say that it has to be done in a safe and comfortable way.
Yeah.
Because I know we're going to talk about attachment. So why don't you, for the listeners, just quickly define what is attachment? What is attachment theory?
Yeah, so attachment theory is a theory developed in the 50s, 60s, 70s by a scientist named John Bowlby. He developed it specifically around humans, and attachment is actually the relationship between two humans.
Okay.
And what he was studying, and then later Mary Ainsworth, another psychologist, and then subsequently many people, attachment's been kind of become a thing lately. They really looked at that relationship between a child and their primary caregiver.
Okay.
And so for dogs,
we are their primary caregiver.
We're their primary caregiver. And like in a way that's different than even dogs that continue to like maybe live with their mom dogs.
Yes, yeah, because their mom dog isn't their primary caregiver, right? We take care of their feeding and all of their other needs, like we're the ones deciding where they sleep and all that.
Yeah.
So with the attachment aspect, I know that you and I have had this conversations many times, and I keep sending you studies and going, look at this one and look at this one. But basically there has been some crossover there, right? Where we're noticing that dogs can also have these attachment figures in their life. Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to overstate it, but the relationship between a primary caregiver and an adolescent human is very, very similar to the relationship between the primary dog caregiver and their adolescent dog.
Right. And so when you're looking at attachment theory, there's different styles or types, I guess they're called.
Yeah.
Right. So do you want to name some of the attachment styles off the top of your head?
Sure. So there's there's secure attachment, there's like anxious attachment, there's avoidant attachment, there's disorganized attachment, and they all kind of like signify different experiences that a human will have in their early attachment relationship with their caregiver, that then becomes almost like it becomes kind of like a model for how they interact in future relationships.
Okay.
And it's not necessarily something that is, you know, when we use words like anxious or avoidant or disorganized, that can feel like it's something that somebody can't overcome. You can, you know, learn about your attachment style or your partner's attachment style. And, you know, it's just about learning how to understand it in a different way and like understand why people may behave the way they do based on their attachment style.
So when we're thinking about dogs, for example, if a dog has been maybe bounced around from home to home, they're not necessarily going to have that secure attachment, right? And it may take a little longer, like you said, that it can change, right? It could change when they're in this new situation with maybe their new caregiver. And our goal would pretty much be to be their secure base, safe haven.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And those are terms from attachment theory. Maybe you can explain a little bit what they mean.
Absolutely. So a secure base is a safe and trustworthy person that your dog can go out and explore the world from. Mm-hmm. So if your dog has a good, strong attachment relationship with you, your dog will feel more comfortable going out into the world and sniffing and discovering and finding independence. Mm-hmm. And then inevitably your dog is going to like find a porcupine or like run into something that scares it. And then that's when the safe haven becomes really important, because when you have that really strong attachment relationship with your dog, you become the safe haven. Your dog returns to you when he or she is fearful and needs comfort.
Which is important, because an adolescent dog is going to find that curiosity. They're going to find that independence. Whereas when they were a little puppy potato, they're following you around, they're stuck to your heel, right? And then it's just part of that developmental phase where they go, okay, I need to explore my surroundings. Mm-hmm. So that's going to happen regardless. Yeah. You want to be the safe place for your dog to come back to. So they go, hey, I got into trouble, but I know that, you're going to help me out. Yeah. And I see that a lot. I think when dogs find something that scares them, like something drops off a counter, and it freaks them out, they want to look to you for comfort, right? And so I think that's important, because we want to make sure that we're always that safe space for our dogs.
Absolutely.
And so when we're talking about the exploration and the independence that they get, that's where a lot of, I think from my perspective, I see clients coming in with adolescent dogs with issues where they go, okay, my dog knows all of this stuff. They know sit and they know down and they know shake a paw, and they can recall every time I ever call them, and then it's gone. Yeah. Right? And so why does that happen?
I mean, that is one of the features of the adolescent dog period. Right. So, and what can be even more frustrating is that if you bring your dog for a consult to Amelia, and Amelia gets your dog to sit, your dog, like ask your dog to sit, your dog will probably listen to Amelia. So they're actually like, that is part of the secure base, like exploration. Your dog is kind of like challenging authority. And I don't want to, there seems to be like, I feel like there's intentionality behind that. They're not purposely trying to like mess with you or to disobey their parent.
What I've heard, maybe this will be helpful, is that like with people, they want to see, oh, see, I was right. And if I do this, oh, see, you don't love me anymore, that sort of thing. I don't know if dogs can have that intentionality, but I think it's kind of similar to what you're saying. Like, you want to see, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to sit for this person, but can I still come back here?
Yeah. And they say that about dogs that haven't had that really secure attachment before in their puppyhood. That part of that secondary socialization period is that they're going to go and they're going to go out there and make mistakes or get scared, or they're going to challenge your authority. And that act of being accepting and bringing your dog back and being that safe haven and that secure base, even when they're infuriating you, is the thing that builds that strong attachment in this second period, this reparation of this relationship model that may have been damaged.
And I think that's so important, because when we get to, we're training a dog that's 8 months old and they're starting to have that regression, and then people go, well, see, this isn't working. I'm going to do something else. And then they may go and, say, okay, I'm going to punish the dog for not coming back to me. And then what you've done is just damage that recall, because you're saying they know this, they should do it. But in reality, this is a developmental phase that they're going through, and they are going to sort of blow you off a little bit. But when they come back, you can't yell at them for it, or you're just going, yeah, you were right. Yeah. I am not the safe place. Yeah. So that's just going to make it even worse down the line.
Yeah. And this is the era, this is the point in the lifespan for like environmental modification, right? Like your dog isn't going to have the recall that they had. Keep your dog on a long lead.
It really is a lot of the time managing a little bit more, because when they were a puppy, they didn't explore. You didn't have to manage quite so much. You go through this period, you manage it a little bit. Like maybe you're using better treats when you ask your dog to sit on a walk where they used to work for their kibble, or maybe when you're out at the park, they're dragging a long line, or there's any number of things that you can do to sort of make it so you don't have to, they don't have to get into massive amounts of trouble, right? You don't have to let them run off and chase a porcupine. You can manage that and go, hey, let's get through this stage. Let's get that recall back to where it was.
Yeah.
And then, we move forward together, having gotten through this phase. Together, right?
Yeah.
And so in the last episode where we had you talking about questions that clients asked, one of them that came up quite a bit was the guilt associated with having a reactive dog or having a dog who is not listening for some reason.
Yeah.
Maybe you can touch on that a little bit, how they can cope with those feelings.
Absolutely. I mean, that guilt can come up so strongly and impact us so much. And the first thing that I would say to somebody who's experiencing those moments of guilt like that is to take a deep breath and practice some self-compassion.
Right.
And so what I mean by that is understanding that, if we are striving for perfection at all times, we're not going to reach that.
And that is not an appropriate goal, right?
Progress, not perfection, right?
Yes.
That's what we say. And so that self-compassion is all about understanding that you might feel judged by people. You might be judging yourself, but is that serving you and your dog in that moment?
Right. And in the big picture, the more we can educate people that, yes, the puppy period is hard. The adolescent period is harder. And then maybe, as it becomes more widely known, people won't feel so judged and they won't have that guilt.
Yeah.
And I think, too, as long as their needs are being met, which we talked about a little bit, too, is, making sure that you're happy and your dog is happy. And making sure that, everybody is sort of getting through it together. We wanted to talk a little bit about the 5 freedoms. We talked about that a bit earlier. So there's the 5 freedoms model. I can't remember who it's by. We can probably throw that in the show notes. But freedom from hunger and thirst, freedom from discomfort, freedom from pain, injury, distress, freedom to express normal behavior, and freedom from fear and distress.
Yeah.
And so if we're meeting all of those things, right, we can be reasonably sure that our dog is going to be happy.
Yeah.
And I think part of that with adolescence is expressing normal behavior.
Expressing normal behavior, especially normal behavior for a teenager.
Which is, being a little bit rebellious, being a little more energetic, or maybe some of us as teenagers, myself included, being a little bit more sleepy.
Yeah.
Sleeping all the time.
Yeah. That's huge for teenage dogs too.
Yeah. And allowing them to do that, allowing them to explore, allowing them to, sort of learn things and then regress and learn things and regress and not having it impact that overall relationship. They're still the dog that you love.
Yeah.
And we say this in the workshop or the webinars, you'll love them again one day.
Yeah.
That was the name of a workshop that Anne-Marie and I went to many, many years ago. And it was about adolescent dogs because everybody feels that way.
Yeah. And I think, I have an example about this. It's about my cat.
Go with it. Love it.
So I remember I had this cat. His name was Finn. She was so lovely and fluffy. And he was at the stage where he was just being so challenging. And I was correcting his behavior so often that I felt like we were actually having a bad relationship.
Yeah.
You don't need to get to that place. I took a minute and I checked in with myself at that point and I was like, I'm supposed to be enjoying this cat. I didn't get this cat because I wanted to police it.
Yeah.
And so I made some environmental changes and I started just spending some positive time with him. And it really shifted the nature of our relationship. And I think I learned that earlier than I got my dogs, and my dogs went through, their adolescent period. So I'm lucky that I learned that when I did. But part of the feature of that attachment relationship we have with our dogs is that when we look at them, there's a chemical reaction in both of our brains where oxytocin is released. Oxytocin is the love hormone.
Yes.
And we should still be able to have those opportunities where we can have that close attachment connection with our animal, with our dog, where we can both feel that. So it's happening in your dog's brain and it's happening in your brain. Just think of that expression on your dog's face when you come home after a day of work or when you've been out. All of those love chemicals are flowing through their brains and their bodies. And I think it's really important to honor that.
It is. And I know, like, if you're staring directly into your dog's eyes, that may be a little confrontational based on
Good point. Yeah.
their language. But I know what I do is when my dogs are sleeping, I'm like looking at them. Like, I just love watching them sleep.
Yeah.
Look at their little feet and everything. You don't have to be staring directly into your dog's eyes, right?
No, that's a very good point.
Because sometimes that might be a little bit threatening. But I think it's really important to know that, that relationship is there. And maybe if you're having a hard time, go and watch your dog sleep for 5 minutes and go, hey, I still love this dog very much.
Yeah.
Even though they're an adolescent and they're giving me
Grief.
a whole lot of trouble right now.
Absolutely.
And I think we do talk about some of the behaviors we can teach our dogs in the workshop. Mm-hmm. So because we already have that sort of covered, I want to talk a little bit about the human aspect of it, which I know we talked in our last podcast about. Mm-hmm. But specifically related to adolescent dogs, what are some of the things that you would say, okay, when you have an adolescent dog, let's say you're going out to the park and you want to be in the right mindset before you go, what could they do to help get through, what they think is maybe going to be another frustrating walk?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that first, kind of checking where you are in your mind and your body and calming yourself down beforehand and really checking in with any worries that you might have and thinking through whether you've prepared in a way that makes sense for those things that you might be more worried about. Coming up with a plan beforehand is a really effective way to deal with some of those things so that you can be nice and calm, because the calmer you are, the more enjoyment you and your dog are going to be able to get out of that interaction of that walk. And then I think another thing is that you might have some goals for what you're going out there and doing, but also remember what's the overall purpose? Is the overall purpose for you to have a good time, for your dog to get some exercise, and for you both to feel connected to each other?
Right. Or is the purpose to show Sally down the street how good your dog is?
Right.
Probably not. We've covered this already. We don't care what Sally thinks. But we need to set realistic goals and expectations for our dogs, right? And I also tell people, clients and people that ask me about adolescent dogs, is it's a good time for them to be in classes, which I know is a little bit salesy of me, but when you have a puppy, everybody's rushing to classes. And they're going, we need to get this puppy trained up. And then when it starts to fall apart, because no matter what training you do beforehand, they're going through this developmental phase. You cannot stop that. And you want to make sure that you're getting through it with some support. Mm-hmm. And so I always find it's really helpful to have, even for myself, to go to another instructor's class and have some support through that, so that you can go, hey, this is going really terribly this week. What should I do to get through it? And then you have someone else to sort of go, hey, maybe you could try this, or maybe try that, or maybe just skip the walk this week and do something else, right?
Yeah. And in my experience, going to the dog classroom for as many years as I've done, with a dog that maybe just was the tail end of adolescence, and then another dog that definitely went through adolescence in class, I've never got any judgment from you all.
And I think that's because we have all been there, right? And everybody else, I say this in classes all the time, is everybody's here for the same reason. Nobody's here because their dog is perfect.
No.
Nobody's here because they don't want any help with their dog. We're all here because we're struggling with something. And there's no need to be embarrassed about it.
Absolutely.
And you've given us some strategies as to how to deal with those feelings of frustrations and embarrassment in the last podcast that we had you on. So if you missed that one, please go back and look at it, because
one more strategy I will share, and we do talk about this in the training, is if you're not in the right headspace, you can skip it.
Yeah, don't do it.
You probably wouldn't want to skip a week of walks with an adolescent dog, because things will get pretty wild inside your house. But if you're really just feeling frustrated and overwhelmed, accept, man, it's okay.
Yeah, do something else.
Do something else.
Do some enrichment. Do a sniffy walk in the bush. Do whatever. You don't have to go for this exact neighborhood walk every single day.
And I think that feeling like we have permission to sometimes just check in with ourselves and honor where we're at and maybe where our dog is at is a really good thing. It's super healthy for both you and your dog and your relationship.
It's a little bit of self-care.
Yeah.
That's the cool thing right now is self-care. And having a good time with your dog is self-care.
Yeah.
So enjoying the time that you spend with them, cuddling with them on the couch, playing fetch in the backyard, whatever you feel like doing with them. So I think just to sort of summarize a little bit, adolescence is tough.
Adolescence is tough.
It's tough for humans and it's tough for dogs.
Yeah.
And
It's tough for dog parents and it's tough for adolescent dogs and adolescent humans. It's tough for everyone all around, really.
Right. It's a challenging spot to be. The most important thing, I think, would be to consider the overall relationship. This is a short period of their life. This is not forever. This is, you just want to keep that relationship strong. You want to build that relationship through positive reinforcement training and doing activities that you and your dog both enjoy.
Yeah.
And then practicing your self-care and making sure that you're taking care of yourself and you're going, yes, we can get through this together.
Absolutely.
Do you have any closing thoughts you want to add?
I guess what I'll say is that as challenging as adolescents can be, both humans and dogs, they just bring so much as well. Like they make me laugh every day. They think about the world in different ways and they challenge me in some really hard, but sometimes some really, really good ways. Humans and dogs both. And so also treasure this time. It's only going to happen once in your dog's life.
Yep. And I think that's great. Look for the joy. Look for the good things in it, right?
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for coming on the podcast again.
Yeah.
And it's been wonderful having you. We'll definitely have to have some more conversations, whether webinars or more podcasts or whatever it is. I just always love hearing Julia's thoughts on on all different topics. I send her things all the time. So there's never any shortage of things to talk about. If you want to hear more from her, you can contact her through her website, which we will put in the show notes. And you can also book a consultation with her or a session with her. If there's something that you're going through with your dog that you want to talk about, Julia is well-versed in Adolescent Dog, so she can definitely help you there. Other than that, I think tune into the webinar, the workshop that we have online, whatever the next upcoming date is when you listen to this episode. Check it out on thedogclassroom.com. And I am your co-host, Amelia. Thank you so much for joining us this week, and we'll see you guys next time.